Okay, so in this video, I wanted to talk about some of the benefits of moving to these so-called second-tier cities or smaller cities. They might be very substantial in terms of their population and lots of stuff going on in terms of economics. Terrific places. I really think they're pretty good. They're nice. Um, and I've lived in a couple of them. Uh, and I certainly have visited many of them many, many times. Uh, and so, why might you want to consider some of those? Well, the first requirement, or the first reason, is these requirements. They get more picky in Shanghai and Shenzhen with regards to these degree requirements. I think sometimes even the amount of work experience, they can be a little more choosy. So this is one reason right off the bat. And another reason is there are some areas that are growing. I mean, there's only so much a particular city's infrastructure can accommodate in terms of the local Chinese population and its growth, right? And I mean that's how Dongguan was created. And now you take a school like Metten, I think they have three or four branches out there, maybe even five. I think Web International English has two branches out there. Um, I know that Foshan, which is it is west, kind of bordering on Guangzhou. It's about like 2 hours from Shenzhen, maybe two and a half. I think that place is also growing. Um, and another reason is okay. Some of you are non-native speakers, and these can be good places for non-native speakers. Okay, as well as native speakers. But if your native language is not English, this is something you may already be aware of. That this could be a good option for you. Um, is going to some of those cities because, well, it's just supply and demand, and also in terms of yeah. Uh, Now, I think also there's the fact that it's a friendlier environment. Some of those places are very, the people are very nice, or they're nicer. I, I, I remember here in Shenzhen, I was working at the headquarters of Web International English, and I worked there for about a year. And then I worked at another web school in Baoan, and I also worked at one in the Qianhai area, which is near Nanshan. But when I was working at the headquarters of Web, it's right in the Huaqiang Bay area. Huaqiang Bay is where you have all these electronics stores, where all the factories have their sort of their outlets, right? Tons of foreign trade, tons of electronics products, just massive. All the students are in foreign trade. Well, actually, a lot of students, no matter where you go, will be in foreign trade. But I will remember speaking with a guy who had just transferred from one of the branches of Web from Dongguan to Shenzhen. And he was saying, wow, I mean, just the feeling of the people are different. And I know from going out to Dongguan periodically myself that you just get a different feel when you're in those cities. It's nicer. The people are nicer. People sometimes they'll even hold the door for you. That sort of thing. I guess that's the big city, small city sort of dichotomy that occurs. But still, there's like 4 or 5 million people there, and there's tons of economic activity, etc. So it's not as like they're not growing. It's not as like stuff's not happening. Um, Another thing you may want to be aware of Dongguan, as I mentioned, I think in passing at some point in one of my videos, Dongguan has a huge disparity between men and women. There are far more women in Dongguan than there are men because of the industries that are out there. For example, I happen to know there are quite a few clothing or textile garment related factories out there. Um, and because of the nature of that industry, for whatever reason, they prefer female workers. It's not so difficult that the women can't do that work, and so that it's just the Chinese know it. Some foreigners know it. It's just a fact. So that might be another reason why you want to consider that. Um, I mean, it's, again, supply and demand. It's, it can't be a bad thing, especially if you're, between 20 and 30, you're 25, 35-year old, between there, and you're single, and you're looking for, that your wife or, or a wife, whatever. I'm not saying you just go there to find a wife. It doesn't happen like that. But nonetheless, it's just something to consider. So, it is. So, another consideration is the rising Chinese wages, and now more and more, where before you didn't have people there who wanted to study English or were willing to had any disposable income to spend on English learning services, right? Now they do. And so and furthermore, it's becoming a more natural thing to learn English from foreigners and to have foreign English schools. A lot of these chain schools are continuing to grow. They're continuing to open more and more branches, and they're branching out into those areas. So they are growing. That's another thing to consider. They're growing, and the cost of living is lower. Okay? Again, the salary is a little lower, but the cost of living is much lower. I always notice when I go there, wow, the taxis are so cheap. Wow, this is crazy. And, the motels are so cheap. You rent an apartment, it's also really cheap. Things are just cheaper. Okay? So just something to bear in mind. Keep an open mind about that, about going to some of those cities. You may want to go there for your own reasons too. It's fun. I know when I travel throughout Guangdong province, I really, there, I just, many of those smaller cities, they have more of a friendly feeling, and you may end up liking Chinese people more just because not because they're Chinese, but because it's just the people are friendlier there. Also, they haven't seen foreigners as much. They may be, I think it might be a good place for some people to start in China. And like I said, that guy who had just transferred from Webb in Dongguan, which is a small city near here, right? He was just saying, wow, the students here, I don't like them nearly as much as I like the students in Dongguan. The students in Dongguan are much nicer. Here, they're kind of, everyone's got a little bit of an attitude. I mean, relatively speaking, compared to Dongguan. And he's a veteran teacher. He had been to lots of parts of China, and he was just, I think he had been to lots of parts. Well, at any rate, he remarked, he was very adamant about this. He was like, man, I miss it back in Dongguan. It's like, this is different. I have a different feeling in the classroom. So